guys, today we're going to talk about the events leading up to the Declaration of Independence and what was going on in the colonies that would want them to break away, that would lead them to want to break away from British rule. And so if we're thinking about we're back in the colonies and we are under British rule, but really Britain doesn't have their hand in our day-to-day lives as colonists. And so we kind of get to do our own thing. And while we have general guidelines, each colony was creating their own pacts and agreements and forms of government. The first of those being the Mayflower Compact. So this was in 1620, and it basically was because you had people on the Mayflower coming for religious purposes, and you had people coming just to be landowners, and so they really didn't see eye to eye on everything. So before they even built a colony, they said, all right, here's the deal. We have to be able to live together and function in a society together. So they came up with this compact saying that they would obey just and equal laws that were enacted by representatives that they all voted for. So they voted for this group, and then they said they would follow the laws of that group, what they decided to do. So this is kind of the first framework we see in the colonies for self-government. So this is the first thing we see of we're really breaking away from these British rules. And then there was the Virginia House of Burgesses in 1619, and this was the first legislative branch of a colony. So it was the first elected assembly. So instead of having people appointed by Britain, this was people elected by the colonists in the colonies to govern what was going on in the day-to-day life. So you see that right now you have the colonists kind of taking more independence. They're electing their own officials. They're coming up with their own rules and systems and governments. They're doing their own thing. So while they're still British, they're not quite, they're branching off a little bit to their own. And this hits a big snafu in 1767. So in 1767, Britain sends a bunch of troops over because they're fighting the French Indian War. So they're fighting French and natives down in the Ohio Valley River area and up in Canada. And they end up winning, and they end up taking that land. They also end up stationing a bunch of troops in those areas to protect the colonists. So they set up troops to protect the colonists, and they say, hey, wait, colonists, you guys need to start chipping in on this. We're not going to pay for this independently. So it kind of reversed that policy of benign neglect. So that idea that the colonists were kind of left on their own to do their own thing, and they didn't really have to worry about British imposed laws and rules. So all of a sudden the British are like, yeah, about that. We're going to go ahead and take that back, and we're going to impose some new taxes and restrictions on what you guys can do, because we need you. It's all about the Benjamins, guys. It comes down to the money. And what's going on is Britain needs money to help pay for this war they just won. So one of the ways they try and do that in 1765 is through the Stamp Act. So the British government required colonists to buy and place stamps on documents. And we're talking about like mortgages, liquor licenses, playing cards, like almost any document, playing cards, guys, playing cards. So they had to buy these stamps and stick them on there. So the colonists were like, whoa, wait. You cannot tax us because we don't have representation back in Parliament in Britain. So your taxes are illegal because we are not being represented fairly back in Britain. So you had some revolting going on by the colonists at this point, and it continues. So this kind of leads into, we'll do a little U.S. history lesson real quick, which you guys should have already. So then this leads to the Boston Massacre and the Boston Tea Party. So you see this heightened sense of like rebellion against the British rule because they're not feeling like it's fair at all. And so then you have little militias popping up all over. So colonists are creating their own little armies, and they're fighting against these British troops. One of the biggest battles at Lexington and Concord. So this was really the catalyst. You had the First Continental Congress meeting, and they were trying to talk about a peaceful way to resolve this conflict. But by the time that this was all going on, the colonists were like, no, we want to fight. We are going to fight these guys. So there you have the beginning of the American Revolution. which then, of course, you have to officially break up, right? You can't just keep on fighting. So, with the Declaration of Independence in 1776, the colonists officially broke up with Britain. They were like, it's been fun, but it's time to move on. And so really in the Declaration of Independence, they said, we don't really like what's going on right now, but this is what we want. We want a new government to protect people's unalienable rights. And remember, when we're thinking about John Locke and that influence, unalienable rights. So what is that? That's, all I can think of is property right now. Your unalienable rights are life, liberty, and property. There we go. But that's not what Locke told us, right? Locke told us it was life, liberty, and the pursuit of what? Happiness. But that gets flipped around and turned into property in the Declaration of Independence. It also said that they want a government that gets its power from the people. So how we vote, and that's what gives the government power. So those were definitely the big drivers, because what, did they feel like that they had a say in what was going on with their British rule? No. So they're looking at all of these things and they're pushing back, and thus we move into the beginning of the United States of America.